more people coming in. Let's give ourselves a round of applause for showing up tonight. You guys are great for doing that. We have a really wonderful reader and writer here tonight as our featured poet. We have Lale Davidson. Let's hear it for her. We're excited to hear her read. Let me take my mask off. So we're gonna have Lale come up and read. This part of the event is gonna be streamed, so it's gonna be on Facebook and YouTube. So say hello to your friends in the internet if they're listening. And we will then, when Lale's done reading, we're gonna have our open mic readers come up, and that part will not be recorded. So you'll have all the privacy in the world except for everyone in this room when you come up here to read. We are going to have, I'm going to start the night with a poem by Marie Ponsat. It's very short, but this is from Hayden Carruth's anthology, The Voice That Is Great Within Us, which is in really good shape, as you can see. Can you guys see it? Okay. This is called To the Age's Insanities. That light's not on, all right. Shriek, said the saw. Smile, said the mice. Come, said the tall, crow-footed, bright, bare-headed boy. I won't call twice. Twist, said the tongue. Leap, said the toe. Leave, said the seaman, arched in fright. One of this crew has got to go. Spit, said the thorn. Kiss, said the tree. But peace, cried I, loud in the night. You are my freedom, and they let me be. There you go. Thank you. All right, so we're going to have Lale come up. She has a new novel out called Blue Woman Burning. It was just published by Red Penguin Books in the fall of 2021. She's been all around town promoting her book, and I'm sure she's sold lots of copies so far. She also, her other book that she's had published is called Strange Appetites, and it is flash fiction or prose poetry. It's like it's really the same, two different names for sort of the same thing. And she reads here a lot at our open mic, and she's a wonderful performer and also like a storyteller. So it was exciting to be able to have her come here on Poetry Night and share her flash fiction, prose poetry, and a little bit of her novel. Her novel has been described as magical realism at its best, which is a great compliment. And she has won, her flash fiction has won the Adirondack Center for Writing's People's Choice Award in 2016. She's a distinguished professor of writing at SUNY Adirondack. And you can find more about her and her work at LaleDavidson.com. Let's give her a warm welcome. Lale Davidson.
Thank you, Carol. Do you know that Carol has been doing this for 18 years? 18 years. Yeah, that deserves a lot of clapping because I can do something, like this for maybe like 5 years, but 18, wow. Oh, thank you for plugging my books. Yeah, so here's my beautiful novel. I wasn't actually going to read from this night because I was going to read some of my poetry and then some of the stories that are more like prose poems, but I could if you wanted. Yeah, it's about a young woman about in her mid-20s whose mother magically disappears on the Altiplano between Chile and Bolivia. And she, they're on their way back from, to the United States. And in the United States as an adult, she can't quite reconcile her, the kind of American reality with this strange thing that happened. And then another cataclysmic event sort of sends her on a quest across the country for her only remaining brother. So it's magical realism, but it's also kind of semi-autobiographical because I grew up with a father who was bipolar and a mother who was a narcissist, and a very lovely narcissist. But it meant that reality was always questionable. It was like always unclear whose version of the reality we were going to go with. So I thought I'd start with a poem that I wrote actually right after Halloween, but it became sort of a New Year's poem, Winter's Victory. Now is the time when earth strips down to her bones and dances fiercely with the stars, when cold clangs in the empty schoolyard like your end of the seesaw hitting the ground after your schoolmate jumped off, when owl eyes burn holes in the night and no mouse is safe no matter how much feather and fur she gathered. Gone is that flamenco dancer who cracked her skirt like a whip and sent her dress up in flames. Now, instead of a bundling against bitterness, she turns her face to the outer dark and grins at that terrifying infinity and dares us to fly to death's dizzying heights, singing, "Hallelujah, hallelujah, it is over." How, after all that, can she lie down and cover herself with softness as air akin as moth and dazzle our darkest days with her frozen light? Thank you. Then I thought I'd read. This is called The Spiral Staircase, and so it's the last story in here, and it's got like a little preface and then 4 sections, and actually, a lot of these stories are, I would say, in the last 8 years or so. But this is like this is an old story. I wrote this a long, long time ago, like, 20, I don't even know how long ago, 25 years ago. And it's a story that I remember. I was actually in Paris, living with a friend in a little tiny apartment. And this was the story, and I labored over every single word, and I really didn't know what I was writing. And actually, the apartment had a spiral staircase, which is what inspired the title. And it was in the writing of this story that I realized, I can't, even though this is really hard, I can't imagine anything else that I really want to do in life. Like, this is where I realized I wanted to be a writer. The spiral stair is formed by an ellipsis of such elegant geometry that it permits only movement. On its wooden steps worn to shallow basins and within its rising banister, inertia is impossible. At certain points, the staircase spins off landings. At other points, rooms. 1. Nautilus. The young woman dreams always of chambers that lead to other chambers. Each chamber has several doors, and each door leads to another chamber with more doors. Sometimes she can see through one chamber into the next and the next with complete disregard for the walls, as though she were looking down the corridor of infinity in a mirror's reflection of itself. In the dream, she knows that each room has a purpose, an obvious purpose, and yet she has no idea what it is. Each room differs from the others in only one aspect. The orientation might have changed. The walls might be marked, or the light might fall at a different angle. Otherwise, they are identical. She wanders from room to room, trying again and again to understand what makes one room completely different from another while remaining exactly the same. The monotony of endless differentiation exhausts her eyes and makes her dizzy, her very consciousness vaporize, and her blood turns white. In the dreams, the fact that she ought to know the purpose of each room and the fact that she doesn't know weighs on her. Each chamber seems the antechamber to the next. Each room leads on, hinting always at knowledge just within reach, as if she were only to go a little further. Each time, she is filled with a great expectation. Each time, she is met with disappointment. Gradually, the torment grows to such a feverish pitch that she wakes up. Sometimes she doesn't enter the rooms. They don't have doors. They just lead into each other without opening or closing. Sometimes it is merely the knowledge of their existence beyond the wall, going on forever and ever, having everything and nothing to do with each other that oppresses her. Sometimes she hears voices from another room. She thinks she does. She cannot tell. The sound is so faint it teases her ear. Sometimes it is a faint knocking, as though someone very far away were trying to get in or out. Other times, she thinks she hears footsteps or laughter or crying. She cannot discern. She strains so hard to hear that her ears fill with silence. She wants to stop wanting to know, but even as she is promising herself she will stop, she finds herself looking one last time and then another last time. Once she entered a chamber and felt quite distinctly that someone had just left. She tried quickly to follow. She caught a glimpse of a person just slipping into the chamber beyond. It was just a flicker, a flash of white, a hand disappearing from the doorframe. But in the next room, she found only the presence of departure, and in the next, a trace of absence. 2. Carousel. The horizon ascends to eclipse the sun. Darkness descends, sucking up lengthened shadows as it goes, robbing objects of their substance. Molecules seethe fierce and casual as rising steam before our very eyes. We pay no mind. Everything passes as nothing at a moment's notice. And across the way, through a window, a light goes on. An old man passes in and out of sight. Something other than time has worn his face gray. The light goes out. Voices from another room rise. A child is crying. A door is slammed. Feet clatter on the stairs, all unseen. The old man shuffles from room to room, stopping here and there, as if intention had escaped him. And he is waiting for it to return. He isn't searching. He knows what he will find. Something stronger than gravity pulls him down. Something fragile about the shoulders. Something beautiful about the mouth. In his hands, once stiff with muscle, now hammocks of skin between bones, he carries something gently. Someone is dancing to the radio. Different voices mingle in different rooms, separate conversations spawning unknown resonations, each room another setting for another scene in a different play, rooms stacked up on top of each other going on indefinitely. How is it that we live what we can never apprehend? And still, across the way, a light goes on. The old man passes in and out of sight. In his hands, a picture which he moves from wall to wall. Now here, now there, light goes out. 3. The landing. He jumps into the car, turns it on, and starts. Then he jumps into the car, turns it on, and starts. Then he... 4. Paradise. The room is almost dark, and in the darkness, bare wood floors glow gently as bones do. Windows line a wide expanse of floor. Gray light sifts through the windows and renders the meeting of wall to floor vague. The room is empty. A very old woman sits in the center. Nothing in the room but the old woman. A large oval box sits on her lap, the woman and the box. Behind her, a picture frame hangs on the wall with nothing in it. The woman, the box, the empty frame. She has had the box all her life. It belonged to her mother, and before that, her mother's mother, and so on for generations. It is dear to her. No one knows what's in it, the box. No one has ever looked inside. Nothing in the box. It feels empty. It could be empty for all she knows, but she doesn't look. What does she know? She wants to know, but she never looks. She sits, face raised upon the half-light, stroking the box, while threads as delicate as nothing fall across her face, binding even as they break. It's funny, that story, because I feel like probably, they say that writers do this, that they write the same story over and over and over again. I think I have been writing this story over and over again in different forms. And what's interesting to me about this is that I'm going to read another poem that was kind of inspired a little bit from Rilke's Lament. And I was going to bring the whole poem to read to you, and then I decided not to, but now I wish I had. But it's interesting because it has some similar kind of imagery of like somebody drives by and you hear crying in the car. And I did not read that poem until, 20 years later. And I keep finding little reverberations like that. So this is called Out of Self. And the little passage from Rilke's Lament that inspired it was, I would like to step out of my heart and go walking beneath the enormous sky. What if you were to step out of yourself, like pulling your hand out from a glove and walk beneath the enormous sky, as in Rilke's Lament? Would you vibrate with pure being, tree-like, or would you merely disperse? Is it wisdom we seek when we meditate, or death, the end of the agony of the question? A perfect line of 3 freckles points to my daughter's left eye, who loves my purple skin tones and sunspots my wrinkled hands, the rare belly laugh that she ignites, that makes me bare my teeth up to my gums. Because ego is false and obscures our way, we are told to lay down the fascia of stories, that identity that binds us to our body, like muscle bound to bone, the secret adoption, a father's despair. But isn't it sometimes that knee-jerk penchant for puns, that habit of forgetting the keys, that dark sense of humor that binds us together, loving what is different as well as what is the same? Surely joy can be found in wavering to and fro between selflessness and self-fullness, between wanting to escape the gloves that hinder handwriting, between being so cold that their bulk becomes a blessing. I read that wrong. Let me just read that again. Surely joy can be found in wavering to and fro between selflessness and self-fullness, between wanting to escape the gloves that hinder handwriting, and between being so cold that their very bulk becomes a blessing. That's how it's supposed to be read. A few things I can tell you about grief. Sometimes it goes underground and you don't know it's even there until it pops up years later, a hidden spring that has changed everything. Other times, in a dark alley, it's an assassin that jumps out from behind a dumpster and stabs you, the blood just as fresh as the first time it happened. I could write a catalog of all its different forms, a wine catalog, say, with hints of cherry, others with a bitter finish, all depending on the manner of death, the relationship, the loved ones themselves. No matter how it comes, give it a seat at your finest table and feed it beautiful things with your bare fingers, one by one. Thank you. It's funny because a lot of my younger poems were all about like family and stuff like that, and I noticed these poems, and a lot of these poems, I just write them and I throw them in a folder, and I never look at them again because I'm like, I'm not a poet, I'm a fiction writer. So then I was opening the folder, going, oh, there's quite a few things in here. Geranium after winter. I think also for me, I'm a late bloomer with poetry. I think I was scared of poetry most of my life. And then I stopped being scared a couple of years ago. It was like, what?
Just recently.
Yeah. Like I just, I felt like I didn't understand what poems were. And also I was intimidated by when I couldn't understand what people read, or when I read them in the books and I didn't get them right away. And then I began to, I don't know, just have more confidence sort of reading them and saying, well, maybe it's this, and maybe it's that, and maybe it's this, and maybe it's this, and then enjoying that process. And I guess in teaching it to other people, I began to understand sort of how to write it, so anyway, it's funny how things happen. Like I get story. People always said, you really are a poet, because they say that poets love words and story writers love plot, and I always loved the words more than the plot. But it seems almost like these different opposing pieces kind of went like this in my life, and Anyway, Geranium after winter. If hallucinations are how peyote speaks, what does the crane's bill geranium say when you rake rotted leaves from the garden after the last snow before the trees bloom? It makes a surprise attack of lemon pine lavender, as if you've interrupted its meditation, fizzing up your nose like champagne, alive while all else sleeps. Hairy, prehistoric, two-toned leaves shift from green to rose when tilted. 7 cleft lobes fan out in your hand like the rose window of St. Patrick's Cathedral. Laid bare by a careless swipe of plastic claws, earthworms squirm to hide their sudden nakedness, to regain the fruitful dark. 2 nights ago, when the moon was a smear of chalk across the sky, you left your class's serial killer fictions in dismay. The nation's monstrous leader, too much with us, seeking relief in further atrocity. In the dark of the cold car, Mahatma Gandhi's grandson reached through the radio saying, "Passive violence leads to real violence." You think the geranium would agree, its voice tangy like the clarinet in klezmer music, which winds Spanish, African, Christian, Jewish, Muslim strains into a twist of joy and pain in minor key, a riot of blood, vine, and human flower. Furry Buddha. What if to pet her is prayer? A furry Buddha, a tiny piece of God whose dandelion fur holds the sun and gentles the heart, whose purr vibrates the chest and stills the mind. Of all the species that run from us as we have so deserved, cats and dogs alone choose us. They are so domesticated we furnish them with cat condos. But what if petting her could open us to the greater, more dangerous wildness of nature, where we could learn to love without owning? Thank you. Bitter. Bitter coffee with a sweet edge, mug warm in hand. I walk the snowy path with my dog. So many things had to happen to make this possible. A country at peace, a city with money, people with the will and time to hew the path. My job that gives me extra to squander on barista coffee. A city of entrepreneurs to start the coffee shop. Enough people with jobs to support it. Health, strong bones and muscles, electric lines and sewers, a dog who can still walk. Awareness of my white privilege taints the moment like a water stain in a white ceiling, advantage gained from the brutal oppression of others. I do what I can to right the world, knowing it will never be enough, but also knowing that loving what I have and sharing it is part of the equation. Thank you. This is called Bhagavad River. So I have these 2 friends who are yoga master teachers, and they quoted this passage from the Bhagavad Gita, and the word devas is a word for sort of like nature divinities. So it says, but anyone who enjoys the things given by the devas without offering selfless acts in return is a thief. We wandered lost in the woods on the banks of a river, trying to reconstruct where we had been this morning, where one of us had lost her sight, silver glasses falling into silver water, leaving her blind. We returned in late afternoon with new eyes. All was changed. All was the same. The former field was now a picnic ground. The trees leaned a different way. Every muddy turnoff to the river's bank was wrong and wrong again. Had we followed an elven man early that morning who led us to an elven place? We asked each other questions, trying to remember and shushing each other lest words override memory's tender tissues before they swirled back together. We knew it was a hopeless task, the river's endless fractal turns and pockets unfolding exponential deposits. We continued anyway, just for the quest of it. And that's when the river gave us back our sight. knee-deep in a cold bin. The glasses glinted on the brown bottom, the missing segment of memory replaced. We bowed and trailed our arms in the river, an offering, not quite as selfless as the cedar branches leaning out over the water like women in perpetual prayer. I just have two more, both from this book, and yes, I have them for sale. This is 15 and this is 7. It's a bargain.
It got reissued?
Yeah, I published it. I self-published it originally as a handbound edition, and that's what won the award with the Adirondack Center for Writing. And then when I got this contract with this new company, and they were like, well, we need 3 books, and then we need a half book as a kind of a teaser. I was like, well, how about this? And they said, sure. So I actually added a few more stories into it. Excuse me. All right, this one's called What Blooms, and it's based on when I was 5, my family went to Germany for a year. My mother was an English professor, and we lived, in Rotendorf, and it's a little village in the Bavarian Germany, and I was put into a German school and had to learn German like that, and it was quite a shock. So, What Blooms? The only part of her first-grade teacher in Germany that she would remember was the flat of her hand, which slapped her face for fidgeting. The only memory that bloomed years later was how to sit in rows, feet firmly planted, hands tracing inky curlicues with a pelican fountain pen. In the family's 3rd-story apartment, crouched under slanted ceilings, she and her brother pored over the German reader, Struwwelpeter, illustrated in thick black ink filled in with orange and red. The door flew open, and in he ran, the great long red-legged scissor man. Oh, children, see, the tailors come and caught our little suck-a-thumb. Snip, 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 they go so fast that both his thumbs were off at last. Afterward, the thumbless boy, contrite, looks up at his mother, red beads of ink springing in 2 arches from the stumps of his thumbs. Ah, I knew he'd come, his mother said, to naughty little suck-a-thumb. An ocean and a year later, back in America, sister and brother wandered far from the house over bluestone sidewalks rumpled by the roots of towering maples, past houses where porches bulged like apron pockets filled with sweets. One day, they traipsed down a street they'd never taken before. There, beneath a blue house with Gothic spires, a garden frothed. Lavender wands and orange suns pushed through the spear-tipped iron pickets. Deep and airy as the sky, a language of flowers captured the children, emptied their minds, and filled their bodies with nothing but beauty, beauty, beauty. A woman's head popped up from the flowers, her hair curly and black. She pointed her shears at them and said, "If you touch my flowers, I'll cut your ears off." Snip, 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 they rasped so loud, the shears of the dark-eyed garden frau. They stood long enough to imagine what those blades would do to their little pink ears, and then they ran back over the broken slates through bars of shadow into their own dining room where their grandmother ladled hot soup. Many years later, the memory still blooms, bright and resistant to meaning. You know how that is? Like, things stick with you, and you're like, but what does it mean? Like, I don't know. So that's all I can do with it. But it's just there. So I just thought, well, I'll put it out there, and you figure it out. So the last one I'm going to read is a kind of a humorous piece, Price Chopper Resurrected. Sometimes life, reality just seems truly magical and bizarre and hallucinatory. And I don't know if you remember many years ago when Price Chopper renovated itself. It didn't close down, it just renovated. as it was open, and it recently did it again, much to my dismay. But all right, Price Chopper Resurrected. Every night, men descend from the ceiling and veil the counters in plastic, then rearrange. In the morning, the ketchup is on the other side of the aisle and the pesto is in the deli. The bakery is in the middle of the store instead of on the side, and the entrance is to the left. New walls have appeared, old walls have disappeared. Each morning, Price Chopper resurrects itself differently. The center that was empty is now full of aisles stacked high with goods. The floors are now tiled more expensively than most customers' homes. Cash registers have been chopped and reincarnated into elegant checkout counters. Employees don't know where to report, and dazed customers mill around searching for their lost peanut butter and frozen fries. No one can remember what color the walls used to be, but now they are cantaloupe with red accents. The health food section has vanished. The soy milk has migrated to baking goods, and dried peas are stacked in international. Even the vegetables are stacked differently, beautifully, inside new black rectangles. Red leaf lettuce blooms vertically in a row below the green scallion paintbrushes and carrot exclamation marks. What was merely large has become colossal. When in the dairy section one remembers the parsley, returning to the vegetable section gives one pause. It's so far away, miles. Senior citizens could power walk the track-sized perimeter every morning if paramedics could only be on call in the meat department. Each day, people adjust to the new arrangement. But the next morning, the milk has moved to the refrigerators along the edge, and the deli is now catty corner. Or is it? No, it hasn't moved at all. Everything else around it has moved. Where is the angel hair pasta? Where is the hummus? Why is the crumbled blue cheese in the refrigerator all by itself? How long has this gone on? The future is uncertain. A tiny old man hops in aisle 5, trying to reach the towering chocolate milk mix that used to be at knee level. Someone help him! People on endless quests open and close the doors of the quarter-mile refrigerators, rubber seals hugging and sucking in percussive bursts. Ah, the paralyzing splendor of abundance, the vertigo of one-stop shopping. Who knew that markups could bear such inexhaustible fruit? Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, let's hear it for Lale Davidson. That was great, right? It's lovely to just spend time with her and listen to her talk and read. You know what? We're going to take a quick break, like a 5-minute break, and you can tell her how much you love her work, buy her books, and we'll be right back.